thing with YouTube is output, right? And I was speaking with Taylor Bell recently, who's also a YouTuber. She's just had 600,000 recently. And I feel like for a lot of people in YouTube, they feel like they need to output, or they're like they're failing, I guess, in a sense. Do you feel like that's still stuck with you, or like how did that? Do you feel like getting married and having other different goals kind of like helped you?
It definitely does. Yeah. When you have more purposes outside of just your job, you can detach your emotions from the YouTube algorithm a little bit more, from how well a video is doing or how well it isn't doing. Filling your time with other things, it just, yeah, it did really help through that period.
It seems like going after goals in, let's say, real life outside of your job is like the evolution of realizing that, like the evolution of self improvement almost in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I think what's the point of all that self improving if it's not going to do things outside of your life, if you're not eventually going to try to impact other people through the things you've done on yourself, pour your cup, which is now full, into other people, develop other areas of your life. The self improvement has to stop becoming a means to an end, I guess.
Yeah.
That, I don't even know if that's the right term. Yes, in that situation, it becomes much larger than yourself, which is what it always should have been from the start. But when you start to have other groups you are associated with, I guess, like social groups that aren't necessarily related to self-improvement, and start to get into dating, which I guess could be associated with self-improvement.
Right.
And you think about building a life with another person, then that's where the evolution should naturally go, I think, is towards helping others and focusing more on societal issues rather than just the issues within yourself. Because you've already handled those now. You've resolved them. I feel like the next logical step is to try to help other people, which is what I was doing with self-improvement, making those videos. It did help other people, but I was really focused on like what I've learned and trying to learn new things for myself as well. Now, I guess there's less of a focus on that. I feel like it's just natural part of becoming older. You figure out yourself. You're constantly becoming who you were always meant to be. And you're like, okay, well, let's start to see what else life is about. Right.
Yeah. It's funny because I think your content used to be about experiences that you went through in your childhood that kind of made you talk about specific things. Now it's more so focused on like, hey, here's what I went through, but also what I'm going through now, things that I'm doing. Like the short film was a big thing. I remember you talking about the short film over a year ago as like one of the big things that you want to do before you died even. And then that becomes like an actual goal. A marathon is something that I feel like a lot of people want to do before they die. Getting married, like all of the things, like it's really cool to see because I think, yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, I was just speaking about this recently. When you are working, that is the only idea of quote unquote productive, like being productive in a way. That's what a lot of people see it as. But I see it as like, well, how are you being productive in your personal life? Like spending time with friends or going on a run or hitting the gym or doing different things like that are also productive. It doesn't always have to be centered around work.
I think we should throw away the word productive. We shouldn't associate that word with a lot of those things. I mean, going to the gym is productive. But, if you just want to fucking hang out with your friends or do things that don't have a strong purpose behind them, I think that's totally fine too. I don't know. And you're so deeply entrenched into self-improvement, you try to find a purpose behind every single action you do. And sometimes that can be counterproductive and leave you over analyzing every single thing you do. Like you played 30 minutes, an hour of video games, you would feel extremely guilty. Like I used to feel early on in self-improvement. And it's just so like the time you spend guilt tripping yourself and beating yourself up for doing something that wasn't completely related to everybody's idea of self-improvement could have been so much better well spent either doing more of that thing you keep judging yourself for, or just fucking doing something self-improvement related.
Yeah. I feel like it's like, right. I feel like the word productive should be thrown away in a sense because it puts us in a mindset of if I'm not doing X, then I should feel Y.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I guess my thought process around it is like playing video games or doing whatever it is it can be productive if you change the way on what you see productive quote unquote is. Because it's not always about moving your career forward. Like spending time having fun playing video games, something like that can be productive But I think you're right. I feel like we should take away almost the word productive in example because it's like, it's still coming from that sense of like,
Yeah, yeah. You know, why do I play video games? 'Cause they're fucking fun.
yeah, exactly.
I like play. I enjoy the time I spend playing video games. That's why I play them. I don't need any deeper motives.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like my life, the past few years, I've changed my idea of like the purpose of life is to progress as much as I can and almost like enjoy the process of time, like the passage of time and seeing like almost optimizing for enjoyment, not improvement. And so like, that's why I say it's productive because I'm optimizing for enjoyment. What's the highest amount of enjoyment that I can get? It's probably not working 12, 15 hours a day like most people do, or they feel like they need to. And that I think there's a real big difference between needing to do it and getting to do it. Because if you work 12 hours a day and you feel like, hey, like I'm choosing to do this, that's a way different energy than going into it saying, well, I need to do this or else I'm this.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, for you, so with, okay, 10 months, you learned Japanese?
Yeah, but I have not kept the trip. The trip was a huge, I'm finding it very hard to search for a large enough motivation to make me continue my Japanese study. There's more priorities in my life right now. Once I book another trip to Japan, I'll be back on it. I've kind of accepted that. Yeah, I've accepted that right now. There's like too much other stuff going.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that. I went to Costa Rica a few years ago. And then I just got back from Colombia 2 months ago. And I'm going to Peru in a few months. So I'm like, oh, I should learn Spanish. Like that should be a thing that I do. And it became a goal for like 2 weeks. And then I was like, this requires so much more than you think it does. And I can imagine Japanese is probably 10 times that. What was that experience like? Because I hear from most people that go to Japan, they say that it's almost like a place you don't want to go because you won't want to go anywhere else.
So what going to Japan was like, or what learning Japanese?
Let's start with going to Japan.
Okay.
Then just
So I would say I haven't been to many other places. I've gone to Italy, which was absolutely beautiful. And I don't think we can count Canada because I lived 10 minutes from the border.
Yeah. Buffalo.
My hometown.
Yeah.
So even though I've been to Italy, I wouldn't say that about Japan. I think it made me want to, explore other places even more because of how different the culture was and how it made me realize how much more of the world I have to see and how different people can be and enrich my open-mindedness. I would like to experience more of that. Japan specifically. So people have an idea of Japan, especially Westerners, that it's this like sort of cyberpunk city. It's living like 200 years in the future.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that maybe in the 90s, but now it's actually behind. Like they still use fax machines. They're very much like traditionalists. A lot of what they do, a lot of their culture is rooted way in ancient times. So that's why there's like a lot of temples and shrines still, because they really care about old tradition, and collectivism, especially in Japan, is very, very strong. They're a very homogenous culture. So, I mean, you won't see a lot of people who aren't Japanese there. So I'm saying compared to America, it's a bit of a shock because you stand out so much in Japan. Whereas in America, you could be any ethnicity, you're not really going to stand out.
Mm.
So going back to the futuristic point, it's not really futuristic. There's parts of it, like Tokyo has some parts that feel like really futuristic. The billboard neon signs that they have in places, and some restaurants like using robots or whatnot. Vending machines are incredible there. If you go there, I was like on the hunt for specific type of sparkling water that they had right near my first Airbnb. We jumped around a bunch of Airbnbs. And the vending machines there, the selection is just fucking amazing. And then the convenience stores are also amazing, which is why probably based on your reaction, you heard a lot about convenience stores in Japan. Amazing food. The food is unbelievable. It is the best food I've ever had. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
The convenience store.
No, honestly, not maybe that, but no, just
in general.
Yeah. Yeah. We use a specific app for Japanese like restaurants to find the best local restaurants and just some of the best food ever. It's so much fun to be a tourist there, exploring and going to all the different major cities or even rural Japan, which is just stunning with the mountain views that you can get there. one thing I learned, which is what I told you before we began recording, was made me realize I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah.
The reality of Japan is that a lot of people aren't happy there. I spoke to a native who I met through an app where I was learning Japanese on, where you can speak to other Japanese people in practice. And he said he watched me on YouTube. So I'm like, let's meet up. Super cool guy.
Yeah.
Shout out Yoshi. And he just told me about the reality of being like a salary man in Japan. They work outrageous hours. It's like in that sense, it's quite similar to America, where people are absurdly burnt out and forced to work very long hours. And unlike America, talking out, speaking out, being confident is actually pretty taboo. So if you were suffering in work or something like that, and you had mental health issues, or you wanted to like explain something to your boss, no, you can't do that. That is frowned upon. Authority is way more respected in Japan. You cannot go against authority. Basically, any problems you have, don't speak about them. You don't speak about them to your friends. You don't speak to them about your parents even, or not your boss, of course. Knowing that and being in Japan, seeing the energy of Japanese people who are they're very closed off because of this. They can't, like, confidence, like I said, it's like, you don't really want to be a super confident person there. People are very introverted, closed off, super polite, which is great. I mean, it's great to be in a society that is so light and respectful to each other, but breaking conventions, very frowned upon. And that's one of the things I like about America is, we're encouraged to innovate, to reinvent ourselves, to have freedom. So being a tourist in Japan is amazing. So you're going to, like, Japanese people generally like Americans as much as, like, there's bad stories of Americans in Japan highlighted in the media. Of course, the food is incredible, super clean, never basically nice to you. But if you lived there, the reality is a lot different.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. First is I recently had the ex-CEO of 7-Eleven on the podcast.
By the way, you've had a lot of famous people on your podcast. Pretty incredible.
I appreciate it. You're one of them.
I don't know about that.
I had him on, actually, his episode's coming out next week. And he was also the ex-CEO of Blockbuster as well. So, like, cool double win. He was speaking about the experience of food in Japan compared it to 7-Eleven down the street is not going to be the same. They're getting shipments in pretty much every single day. So it's going to be a lot better. So I can understand the food aspect, which is insane. But when it comes to the way that you show up, being confident, having a personality, it's almost like they shout it, like they want you to put it down.
Yeah. So another thing I'll explain, the same guy I met up with who explained a little bit of this to me, he went to some European country for studying abroad, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And he told us how while he was in the European country, he felt so much more free to be himself and confident. He, like, spoke up more and, like, was generally just more extroverted. And then when he went back to Japan, immediately becomes closed off again and doesn't speak up and isn't as confident. So, like I said, the energy, you can feel that in the energy of the place if you spent enough time there. And I spent almost a month. So, yeah.
Do you think it was enough time
to understand the lives of people there? Probably not. Like, I wasn't living the life of
of course,
Japanese native.
Yeah.
But I had experienced enough to make me realize, and from the anecdotes from Yoshi himself, made me realize a lot of Japanese people aren't happy.
It's sad to hear that. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of places in the world that are like that. I feel like a lot of people in the United States would even say that in certain areas for sure.
Yeah.
I had a guy named Ken Honda on probably last year. He was like a best-selling author, money mentor. He's worked a lot with Lewis House. And he lives in Japan. He invited me out, told me to come out. And I'm curious, how long is like the perfect amount of time? I feel like 2 weeks is like enough.
People usually recommend 2 weeks. I think that's ideal. I personally wanted to experience what it would be like to almost live there,
right,
and be there for a month. So I would say, as a tourist, you're just going to have the best time ever for 2 weeks.
It's good to hear. I feel like I'm most excited because it's been one of those places, like, Hawaii was number one for me. And I went there last year. I spent 3 months there and I feel like it wasn't enough. And Japan is really under that because you hear so many things about it. But Kyoto, for some reason, seems more exciting to me than anywhere else. What was your favorite when you went?
My favorite place is a good question. I would say, honestly, the small little neighborhood we stayed in, the start and end of our trip in Tokyo, which was Shimokitazawa. It's got like kind of hipster vibes, and they sell a bunch of thrift clothing. There's a lot of
It's a
thrift
big thing.
shops.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fashion's crazy there too. Like they got some amazing fashion.
Yeah.
Another place we went, Harajuku and Shimokitazawa. They're all about fashion there, but specifically Shimokitazawa, it just feels like it almost doesn't even feel like you're in Tokyo when you're there. The buildings aren't huge or anything. It just feels like a small neighborhood
Mm.
in Japan with smaller ish buildings. And like the way Japanese streets are set up for walkability is amazing. And Shimokitazawa has, I mean, all the streets feel like it's just flooded with people and not cars.
Mm.
And I love places like that to start off with, but it just had this sort of vibe. The people there were very young too. It was cool. It was almost like, well, the young people aspect of it was like Austin.
Yeah.
It was really cool to be there. There's a lot going on. Really, really good restaurants, specifically the curry. You go to Shimokitazawa, go to the curry restaurants around that area. By the end of the trip, it felt like home. Felt like a homecoming coming back to that. Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I hear it sounds like it's almost like New York in a way, like walkability and then also fashion in that sense, but like obviously completely different in the sense that New York is like full expression.
Yeah.
Like New York, yeah, when you go there, but overstimulated to an insane extent. Like every time I go to New York City, I'm there for a weekend and I'm like, I I can't be here.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay, so Japan, insane. M- you got engaged. How's that been? I mean, for a lot of your older content, like this is sick. It's sick to hear. For real.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Because you know, I
Well,
know you.
quite a few people have said that in the comments. And then I remember, like, oh yeah, I made like a bunch of videos about how I used to like cry every day from breakups and whatnot. Okay, well, a couple of videos. And so I guess that gets people real fired up when they see, oh, I've been engaged after all that shit.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, it's been nothing but amazing. Shortly after I arrived in Austin, it was like instantly just felt more purpose in my life. And I enjoyed being a better man for her,
Mm.
especially. And above all, it sounds like kind of selfish when I say it, I guess, but I, I, she likes when I say it. Let's just put that out there.
That's
I really love the man I am when I feel more confident. I feel like I could be greater, something greater when I'm around her. And I think that's super important in a partner. It's like, why would I not want to experience that all the time? So of course I'm going to court her and get to the point where we get engaged. And we moved in together at right before Japan last year in late September. And that's been really great. Yeah, there haven't really been any issues other than like very small kinks you got to figure out when you first move in with someone,
yeah.
your partner, which I've never done. Other than that, it's, yeah.
Yeah, it is cool to see because not only you talked about a lot about your experience, but you've made a lot of videos on relationships to begin with. I feel like you made one about situationships, like Gen Z going through that. I think it's a difficult thing. I'm curious for you when it comes to relationships, because of your track record, and I feel like for a lot of your audience, I would say they have a lot of limiting beliefs around relationships. Was there a belief that you let go of, or was like what was that experience like stepping into that and actually phrasing it? Yeah.
It was less about like letting go of beliefs and more about understanding myself better through her. So I found out through our relationship, through enough of our interactions and disagreements, that I'm someone who's got a pretty anxious attachment style. So, whenever she's not responding as quickly, I'm I'm reverting to the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
I'm kind of texting her, edging around the question I actually want to ask, which is like, what were you doing?
Mhm.
And I'm like trying to get that out of her in a very indirect way
Yeah.
so as to not like offend her or think to make her think I think something's wrong, which I thought something was. I realized there was some insecurity there from previous relationships, from previous experiences about the lack of trust I had when it came to my partner because of what I went through in the past. Then I realized I'm attracted more to like kind of the avoidant types because I'm anxious. Thus, they naturally seem to be attracted to each other. She's very independent and is frequently away from her phone. She doesn't charge her phone a lot, which I was like,
What?
like this is like even when I live with her, phone is never, it's never turned on. It's a pet peeve of mine, but
Yeah.
I always thought that meant she'd like, oh my God, why is she not responding? You know, stuff like this. She just doesn't think about those things as much as I do in the same way that I do. And that made me take a step back and be like, where are these insecurities coming from? How can I stop being so nervous and have such a lack of trust with this person who has given me zero reason to not trust them? How can I be more independent the way she is? Because her avoided, like I can learn something within her attachment style and become securely attached. And so learning those things about myself is something that I've gone through our relationship and I'm still going through, and just integrating more of the positive aspects of the stuff about her that I admire into myself has been more of the process rather than just like letting go of beliefs. Although I guess when we're talking about trust, I have to let go of the beliefs I have surrounding what I believe someone is doing when they're not with me all the time.
Yeah. I feel like everything is surrounded by around like unlearning or like letting go because and like you said, you have to almost practice a new way of being that starts with you like unlearning your previous practices or ways of being. Because I can resonate with that. I mean, I definitely can understand where you're coming from. That. And it's a reflection of yourself, really, I feel like. And I think it's difficult, especially in relationships. I think relationships are the most difficult thing out there. Genuine.
Yeah, pretty hard. Can think off the top of my head what's more difficult.
It's funny though, because I feel like for a lot of people, we prioritize the things that are visible metrics. Relationships are one of those things that you can't really like, you can tell that things are moving in the right direction. They're doing better, but there's nothing that you can be like, oh yeah, we were at a 9 last week. We were at 10 this week. Like the ways of being can be different, but I think it's really difficult to like say like, this is different than last time.
Yes, feelings and emotions, especially usually for men, are very hard to communicate and quantify.
Yeah.
It is tough to find the right words to explain why your partner made you feel a certain way.
Mm.
That's super important. If you don't want the patterns to repeat, you got to fucking communicate this thing in a way that's understanding and isn't just attacking your partner, you know?
Yeah. I feel like time doesn't really heal all things
No.
because it's like, there's been so many times I'm on a plane and I'm sitting next to someone that's in their 70s and their 80s. They're trying to give me advice. I remember one time I was on a plane and the guy was telling me I should get in like the military. And I'm over here like, man, there's no chance in hell that I'm getting in the military. And like whatever he says, I'm just, there's at one point where I'm just like, man, I really appreciate, but I don't need your advice. I really don't. I appreciate it. And it's difficult to hear because I mean, we're taught as we grow up that wisdom comes from aging. And I just don't believe that's true because I think if you're continuously learning the same lesson and you're not actually learning it, you're just as dumb as you were when you were 20 as you are when you're 70. And so the same thing with relationships. Like when you grow up and you repeat and you attract the same kind of person, it's really difficult to be like, oh, I'm going to go after someone new because what I know is what's easiest. For you with this one, was there something different that you noticed or like, how did you approach it different?
I think it was just at a time in my maturation in which I was able to finally self-reflect properly to recognize the pattern that, oh, maybe this has a lot to do with me and I need to change some things. Or else, even if we separate, I'm just going to repeat the pattern again and get into a relationship with someone who's similar and we're going to have the same problems. I have to be the initiator. I have to take responsibility for what I want out of a relationship. I have to take the action. There was actually a specific point that really nailed that into my head with my fiance, which was we were going through quite a rocky part of our relationship. Almost 2 years in, we actually did separate for it's like a month or two. That was finally when I was like, okay, let's think about this. Why is this a pattern in my life? Why does it always get to this point, like 2 years into all my relationships, where things start to fall apart and we start to have disagreements, and it's the same ones almost every single time? So finally, I realized, like, if I can't make this work with this woman who is so incredible and kind and the greatest partner I've ever had and so beautiful, then I don't think I can make it work with anyone. So I reached out to her again and we talked about exactly this and worked through it finally. Worked through those differences, the attachment styles, the questions we had about whether the future could work. It did. And it did. And everything actually did improve when things finally changed.
It's funny, we're as humans, we are so easy to neglect reflecting. Like we just think, let me do what I've always done. We as humans always revert back to what is most comfortable. It's so difficult for us to say, hey, like, how am I playing at this? And I think that's a question I've been asking myself a lot of, let me not project outwardly. And let me ask myself, like, what am I actually playing this? Like, how am I being probably the biggest problem in this? And especially when it comes to relationships, it's like, hey, like what's the one common denominator? It's always you.
Yeah. Yeah. The most powerful thing you'll ever do, stop being a victim, even if you are a victim, and take accountability for what you can control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do something about
A lot of your contents recently has been based around Gen Z. And I think for a lot of Gen Zers nowadays, it's almost like we're fed that victim mindset more than ever because we have more of an outlet for it, right? Like content has never been bigger than it is now, especially YouTube, where we're just fed in so many, everyone has their own perspective and a lot of people are putting that into the world. What do you feel like Gen Z needs most? Just
That's a big question.
yeah, I guess just getting out of that victim mindset, I
Okay.
guess. That like the mindset is the core of life, right? And I feel like that's it.
Well, a lot of Gen Z is still young. They're younger than me. You know, you naturally figure things out as you get older. Although, like you said, it doesn't always happen that way. It's just old people who never learn and gain wisdom. For those people, you know, live a moral life, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way for everybody. I'd say getting out of the victim mindset, it is hardwired deeply into you if you blame everyone else and all your circumstances for your problems. I would say it's just doing some of the actions I've talked about and you've talked about on this podcast, which is really just taking time to sit with yourself when you get angry at something, when you get upset, annoyed, whatever negative emotion. I think it's even positive. I think it's beneficial to focus on why you feel positive too, but usually, but this makes more sense. Like focus on when you feel those things and really contemplate why, journal about it. This is a lot of what I did. My whole YouTube channel is basically just like an open journal of me figuring out my problem. A lot of my YouTube scripts, I don't know where they're going to go when I'm writing them. I don't have, for my self-improvement videos, I didn't have a planned outline for my script. It just goes and then I figure out my problems through writing the script. That's why I think journaling is basically that process. I think it's super important. And you have to consciously first remind yourself, have these reminders, whether it's in your environment or on your phone, something, I don't know what it would be. I can't give you a concrete example off the top of my head, but something to remind you to say, hey, stop for a second and think, why might I be reacting this way right now?
Mm.
Why might I feel like a victim? And what can I do with the control I have over my physical self to improve this situation, or to think of, if I can't do anything to improve it, adopt a different mindset that's more optimistic or beneficial to the situation, I guess. There's only so much positive thinking can do.
Yeah.
You've also got to prove to yourself that you're no longer a victim through your action and the evidence you accumulate. I accumulated over a long period of time that I'm no longer the person I was when I felt more like a victim. I grew out of that self. Most powerful thing you can do to let go of something or become the person you want to be is just to outgrow the version of yourself that existed when you were programmed into a certain mindset. So like, this is why moving to Austin was so powerful for me, or moving out of my parents' house. Because my parents' house, this is where old Cole was associated. This is where old Cole was developed. This is where the Cole who did not like himself, who played the victim, who did nothing with his time, who saw zero point in improving himself, lived for 20 something years. To outgrow that version of myself that existed for 20 years in the same environment is really hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for you to do that. It's possible, but so I think moving out of the place you existed, where the self you don't want to be anymore exists, is super fucking powerful. Because you can like at that point, once you've detached from it, it's a matter of the programs will come with you, but they'll not nearly have as much of a hold on you because you're experiencing something so novel that your brain and you will feel enough motivation to be like, let's change my routine. And your routine is who you are. And if you change that, which moving away from your old self, metaphorically and literally, if you do that, then it will be much easier to convince your brain and your subconscious that you are no longer the person who's a victim.
It kind of ties into a mindset that I've been talking about a lot recently, and it's that exposure creates expansion. Whether you're exposing yourself to a new environment, new people, a new job, whatever it is, something new, and you expose yourself to that, you are going to expand as a person. Like, regardless of how you feel about it, or even if you do nothing, even if your routine changes nothing, you as a person is going to change because you're seeing people around you. Say, for example, you say yourself, like the area that you live in, you're going to be surrounded by different kinds of people. And especially like Austin, for example, is you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that are driven to be the best version of themselves, at least in the area that we're in. You would feel like a piece of shit if you did not put yourself in a position to be like, hey, like, I'm seeing all of these other people do the best that they can to create the best life that they can. And I'm just going to sit here and not do the best that I can. I just don't think it can happen. I really just don't think it can.
So it's much harder.
And especially in Buffalo, or where I'm from, is Albany, I mean, it's gray and 20 degrees out.
Especially Albany. That place sucks.
I know.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it
Did I
does.
tell you that I went to college there?
Yeah.
Okay. We can do that.
Yeah. A year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not an easy place, but I think also it helps you develop a lot of grit, because if it's nice out and it's 70 degrees and it's sunny every single day, it's real easy to go out and run or go out for a walk. I mean, of course, there's going to be days when you don't feel like it, but that environment makes it a lot easier to want to do those things. When it's 20 degrees out and it's 5 a.m, the last thing you feel like doing is even moving, let alone get out of bed and go for a run kind of thing. And I think that's also another side of it, but I think changing your environment to getting to a place where you're surrounded by people that are driven to be the best version of themselves, if that's a priority for you, it's really hard to beat. When you moved to Austin, you even said this year or last year, you worked less than ever. You made a little bit less, but not as much as you thought you would. How has Austin stressed you as a person?
Yeah. It's just the person I am here can't be beat. Can't be beat, man. Like I said, I haven't been to a lot of places. I haven't lived in a lot of places. Lived in Albany for a year in college. I lived in Vegas for a few months with a few friends when I was first coming up on YouTube with a few of the YouTubers. But there's just certain energy here, man. Like, and the people I initially surrounded myself with here were all very ambitious, and most of them are creators as well. It makes you want to do stuff that's good for yourself. Ever since moving here, right before I moved here, I had serious health issues. We did talk about that on the last spot. Since moving here, those are completely gone. Even the smaller health issues, particularly with like digestion, sleep, were problems I've had for almost half a decade now. Sleep, I mean, I've had that for 20 years.
Yeah.
Whole life. Those have pretty much gone away. I've focused so much more on holistic health than let's make this YouTube video. How many views is getting? Work. Just working myself into terrible physical health.
Yeah. Work is one of those things, especially when we've talked about this, content is one of those things that you almost create a hamster wheel for yourself. You almost create another job. And it's it's funny because you get into entrepreneurship so that you can make your own hours, so that you can work when you want to, so that you can create leverage for yourself. And yet, almost every single person that I know that's in content just created another job for themselves. How difficult was it for you, especially because you've had predictable growth since you started growing? I guess I would say you're probably at 750,000 now, around there.
Yeah.
And I think last time we were on, we were at about 500. So like you've grown exponentially even since last time we spoke. How has your relationship with work shifted now? Obviously you have multiple different priorities, but it seems like the growth is still happening.
Yeah. I realized that you don't need, this is the biggest thing I've learned, I think, over the past year is the work doesn't have to feel stressful and cause pain in order for it to be effective.
Yeah.
And I had to feel super tired at the end of the night, feel fucking groggy, and my back's got hurt. Or I have to work for it, or
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like the results I get from it are worth acknowledging, I guess. It doesn't feel right to make a bunch of money when I'm not sweating for it. I'm not bleeding for it. And when I finally like took a step back this past year and like thought to myself, you hear the 80-20 rule all the time.
Mhm.
I've been reading about that since the first self-help book I read, which was Tim Ferriss. And yet just refused to think to myself, bro, you can have a highly efficient business that's making a ton of money and you don't have to stress, and it doesn't have to feel like you are killing yourself over it in order for it to feel good.
Yeah.
And feel like the results, like you deserve the results. So finally internalizing that mindset, I asked myself, what is actually producing income out of everything I'm doing? What is producing the most income? Which is the first thing to focus on, I think. How can I make videos that produce the least amount of stress in me, but produce the highest reward? And over the past the last few months especially, I've really honed down on this philosophy. And now I'm making about as much money as I did in my like peak income, which was like 2023,
Yeah.
with stress levels that are incomparable.
Mhm.
Because I said, it's like screw everything else. I stopped posting on Instagram. What's the point? I don't know. I don't like short form content, first off, and reels are kind of the way to make money on Instagram. Stop posting on Instagram pretty much completely. I only give updates on my story every once in a while. I stopped the idea of like just diverting my efforts into every single content area. I dropped the podcast. I started up a second channel, which is actually kind of picking up speed, which is pretty cool. And it's enjoyable and there's no editing involved. And then I switched from self-improvement mainly to like video essays on modern issues.
Yeah.
Not just because it felt like the self-improvement was getting stale and it didn't reflect me anymore.
Mhm.
I don't really identify as like a self-improvement guy anymore.
Yeah.
But also because, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, once you've done all that, the main focus now is like systemic issues, societal issues
Mhm.
you want to help people with. And the video essays require way much less effort from me. The script is really the meat of it.
Yeah.
I do more research now for each video, but I no longer have to go out and record my cinematic B-roll, which might be disappointing to some people, might be disappointing myself sometimes because it's fun. All I do is tell my editor what to do in my script, send it off to my editor. I can keep that weekly basis without burning out and take my creative efforts, which is what YouTube was. This is another thing. This is a whole topic on its own that I have been thinking about is just totally separating my creative hunger from YouTube, from my income,
Mm.
I think, and putting it in things that I don't care whether they produce a lot of income or not. And now YouTube's kind of it's more of a business. And that has actually been so much less stressful than making self-improvement videos, filming all this fucking cinematic B-roll, trying to be as creative as possible and then seeing every other video flop.
Mhm.
It just stressed me out so much. And I didn't even realize how easy it could be to make as much money as I was making like 2 years ago without all the stress and the burden.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge because one of the things we've associated stress with achievement. And if we're not stressed, and especially in content, because it's not a blue collar job where you are actually physically exhausted at the end of the day. So you almost feel like you have to physically mentally exhaust yourself. But like you said, your back's hurting, you're getting to the end of the day, your face hurting because you're staring at the screen all day. Like you feel like you need to beat yourself up in some way or you don't deserve it. And I feel we've been sold this idea that we're not enough as humans to begin with. And so we have to be enough to achieve it. And if we're not working as hard as we can, it doesn't work that way. But I also want to dive into the creative outlet because as a YouTuber, as a content creator in general, the entrepreneur in general, you probably feel like most things that you do, you can make money in them. Why not make money? So for you to like almost change the way that you approach creativity and go towards other ways of finding your creativity and also diving into work almost like this as a business and focusing it on more of a business aspect, it's huge. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's probably the most difficult thing because they feel like in every creative outlet, especially if you have potential, why not make it into a business? Why not make money off of it? But again, it creates more stress and it creates more of that hamster wheel of, oh, I should do this now. And then it becomes another business.
Yeah. I think it's really important to separate your artistic pursuits, I guess,
Yeah.
at least a little bit from your main financial source.
Yeah.
The two can be connected, but for me personally, knowing I put so many hours into this piece of content and got like 9 out of 10 on the YouTube ranking, it's like, it hurts so.
Yeah. That's to you.
Yeah. It's attached to me. That's a great way to put it. Whereas the video essays, like it's me and I'm writing these things, but it's not a creative expression of myself that I feel like is like an art. It's like video essays aren't really an art to me. So even if a video essay did flop, which knock on wood, the average views have been much better. Yes, I transition. I don't feel as stressed or worried or anxious on my YouTubes, that I'm falling off or anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm separated from this. This isn't my art. It's okay. I mean, it's attached to my finances, which is a big deal.
Right.
That I guess that makes me realize like the artistic and the effort mattered more to my doing well than the finances thing.
Yeah. You're not emotionally attached as much.
Yeah.
It's not like the beginning of your journey was like, this was my journey. And so when you're talking about yourself, you're talking about what you're going through, what you had been through. It's a lot more of like, this is my journey. Like, I want people to, it's like a piece of art almost. I want people to hear this. And now it's more so like, this is what's going on. This is what we can do about it. And you're still being able to do that. I mean, do you think that you would have grown as much as you have if you weren't fast in the beginning?
That's the question. That is the question that many people have asked me. I will never have an answer.
Yeah.
I don't think I will ever. I think something within me always knew YouTube was going to work out. Maybe it wouldn't have happened as quickly as it did. I think, as cheesy as it sounds, like all these things I went through were necessary to get to the point where I'm at now and to come to these realizations.
So what's next?
What's next is a novel. That's the next big thing. Next big project I'm working on since the start of this year. I'm doing a novel. I'm probably going to market it as like the world's first self-improvement fiction book.
Okay.
There's not going to be, I mean, every novel or fiction book you could categorize almost as self-improvement because there's always very good lessons written through characters.
Yeah.
In a story in novels. I've always loved storytelling. That's what I've been doing on my channel forever. Now that I don't do it as much in my videos, it's like, the short film was awesome. Writing a screenplay, my screenplay was outrageously sloppy and not professional at all. But I like that process of building a story, a fictional story that has a ton of lessons in it that people can relate to the main character and learn about themselves more through the character progressing through their life. And so this novel follows a 20-year-old college guy who is trying to understand himself in a post-pandemic world. And he's going through all the modern struggles a lot of 20-something-year-olds are going through right now. I feel like there's not any book I can think of that covers that yet. There's going to be a fantasy aspect in it as well, where the protagonist will be going through this really tragic loss in his life, as a lot of novels do. And that triggers this mind fracturing with it. So he's going to develop the ability to see into a parallel reality because his mind is so distraught by this loss that he goes through. And he can't handle it. And at first, he can't control when he switches from his reality to the parallel reality, and it causes like he starts to think he's kind of schizophrenic, and it's going to go into a lot of mental health themes and seeking professional help, like a psychiatrist, getting prescribed meds. And even though like he doesn't actually get diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so eventually he's going to meet somebody who's like his mentor, who also developed that same mind fracturing, is going to teach him how to hone the ability. And then he's going to learn how to switch realities on command. In that other reality, this is going to be the main plot, could be he's going to be searching for the thing he lost in his reality. That's kind of the plot of the story. Through that, he goes through his whole self-improvement arc. And I think a lot of my audience will be able to relate to the story. So I think it's a fun pursuit. I've never worked on one thing for that long. Started this year. We're about 12,000 words in. It's going to be at least 75,000. So it's going to take the entire year to write. And excited.
I'm excited for you. You're a script writer with your content. So to begin with, so for a book to come out, you're already on. So for this one to come out, dude, I'm in for you.
Yeah.
For all that's to come. Thanks for taking time to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's a full circle moment.
Yes.